Hello, and welcome back to the Podcasting Problem Solver. I'm Leah Bryant, your host, podcast growth strategist, coach, and the one here to help make your show more findable so it works for your business. And this is your Thursday Quick Win. Remember, these are short tactical episodes to help you podcast with more clarity, confidence, and momentum. And today we are talking about the name of your podcast. Because if you're trying to be clever or mysterious with your show title, it might be costing you listeners. And I get it. You want your podcast name to stand out, feel creative, maybe even make people chuckle. But here is the thing. A clever name is cute until it's confusing. If people don't know what your podcast is about at a glance, they're probably not going to be clicking on it to listen. And here is why clarity always wins. Okay. Number one, people search for solutions and not your inside jokes. Yes, it's true. Your dream listener is likely typing something like podcasts for women's fitness or how to grow an interior design business into the search bar. They're not searching for coffee and chaos. I mean, unless that's actually your niche. If your title doesn't clearly communicate what your show is about, you're leaving listeners and, yep, that's right, friends, search traffic on the table. This is a strategy and attraction problem. Your name needs to work with both the algorithm and your audience's brain. All right, number two, clarity builds trust faster. Yes, people are busy. If they have to guess what your show is about, they're just going to keep scrolling. But if your title clearly says the Fitness Coach's Playbook or Booked and Busy Systems for Creative Entrepreneurs or Time and Productivity for Working Moms, see these, they immediately let your audience know what they're getting and whether it's for them, right? Number three, clever does not convert. Yep. When someone recommends your podcast, they're not going to say, you have to listen to this one called, wait, I think it was like Pun and Time Zones. They're actually going to say, there's this great show for business owners who want to grow with a podcast. See, you want to make it easy for them to find and share your show. So yes, creativity is great, but not at the expense of clarity. Keep that creativity to your episodes, okay? Your podcast name is your first impression. Make it obvious, relevant, and search friendly. And I hear you right now. Okay, Leah, this is great, but why does my podcast matter so much? And this is a great question. I want you to think of your podcast name like the sign on a storefront or the cover of a book. Before anyone steps inside or flips open a page, that sign or that cover tells them whether it's worth their time. Your podcast name works the exact same way. It's the very first impression people have of your show. Before they hear your voice, before they know your expertise or see your title. And we all know first impressions stick, right? Second, your name directly impacts your discoverability inside podcast apps. This is where PSO, which is podcast search optimization, and good old-fashioned SEO come into play. If your dream listener is searching for a topic you cover, but your title doesn't give them any clues, guess what? You're not going to show up where you could be. Third, your name plays a huge role in word-of-mouth referrals. When someone recommends your podcast, they're going to say it out loud. If your name is clear and memorable, it sticks. If it's confusing, well, that referral energy just fizzles on out. Your name influences whether people will actually click play. Think about your own behavior. When you're scrolling through new podcasts, you don't just sit there and analyze every description. You glance at the name and you make a snap decision. Does this sound relevant to me or not? Here's how this ties into my seamless podcast framework. In the strategy phase, your podcast name sets the foundation. It needs to align with your goals and your ideal listener's language. In the attraction phase, your name becomes a magnet. A clear, relevant title helps you get discovered in search and shared in conversations. So yeah, your podcast name isn't just a label. Think of it as your storefront sign, or your book cover, or a billboard on the side of the road. And if you get it right, it does the heavy lifting for you every single time someone sees your show in a feed. If you're listening right now and thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder if my podcast title really passes the strategy and attraction test. Well, guess what? I've got you, friend. Inside my free newsletter, you can hit reply to that welcome email you're going to get when you sign up with the words podcast title audit. Let me know your podcast title. Send me a link to it. And I will give you some quick feedback plus one suggestion to make your name work harder for your growth. All right, let's break this down a little farther because not all podcast names are created equal. There are three main types of podcast names, and knowing the difference can save you a lot of second guessing. First up, descriptive names. So think of these as super clear and keyword rich, like the Interior Design Business Podcast. There's zero question about who that's for or what it's about. Think of this as the does exactly what it says on the label approach. Then you've got creative or branded names. These are unique to you, but still give enough context so people aren't left scratching their heads. A good example is Online Marketing Made Easy, right? It's personal, but it's also obvious what you're going to learn when you listen. And finally, but certainly not least, is the abstract names. These are the fun and mysterious ones. They don't give you much detail, but they're intriguing enough that people check them out. The thing is, abstract names usually only work if you've already got a big brand or following behind you. Here's the way I like to think about it. Descriptive names are your neon open sign, clear and easy to spot, right? Creative branded names, those are more like your logos that are customized. They're distinctive, but still make sense. And then the abstract names, well, those are like the secret speakeasy door, right? They're cool, but only effective if people know that they're already there. Now, how does this connect with the Seamless Podcast Framework? Well, in the strategy phase, choosing the right type of name is part of aligning your podcast with your goals. Do you need clarity to build discoverability or a branded name to extend your authority? In the attraction phase, the type of name you choose determines how easily new listeners can find you and decide, heck yeah, this one's for me. So if you're just starting out or grow your show strategically, clarity always wins. Do not forget that. You can add personality through your branding, your artwork, or even your tagline. But that title, that's the part that has to pull its weight every single time. And here's the bottom line. Descriptive usually wins for growth. Creative names can work, but should be paired with a strategic tagline. And abstract usually only works if you've already got a big brand behind you. Okay, now that we've covered the types of podcast names, let's talk about some quick tips for actually choosing yours, okay? Because this is where a lot of people get stuck. They circle on names for weeks instead of just moving forward. I'm going to share 7 things to keep in mind when you're naming your podcast. Number 1, we want to make it easy to say out loud. Word of mouth is still one of the best growth tools. And if someone has to stumble through your title, they're probably not going to recommend it. Tip number 2, keep it clear and simple. If your title feels like a tongue twister, people won't remember it, and they definitely won't repeat it to their friends. Tip number 3, use searchable keywords. This is huge. Think about the exact words your dream listener is going to type into that search bar. If you're a business coach, don't hide behind cutesy phrases. Make sure business or entrepreneurship is actually in the title. Tip number 4, keep it short. Aim for 4 words or less. Long titles get cut off in the podcast apps and on tiny phone screens. Number 5, add your name if it builds authority. If you've already got brand recognition, attaching your name to artwork can be in your favor. But if you're still building, it's often stronger to lead with the topic first. Number 6, avoid special characters. Things like ampersands, hashtags, or symbols don't always show up well in the apps, and they make your title harder to search. And last but not least, don't stress about being clever, please. I'll say it again. Clarity beats clever every single time. Because clever may make you smile, but the clear, that's where people are going to click. So how does this all weave into my Seamless Podcast Framework? Well, in the strategy phase, these tips keep your name aligned with your bigger goals and audience language. In the attraction phase, they make your podcast easier to find, easier to share, and easier to remember. So I want you to think of this checklist as your guardrail, right? So keeping you on track while you brainstorm. A name that follows these 7 guidelines, yep, that's one that's going to work with you instead of against you. Okay, we've covered what to do. Now let's flip it and talk about what not to do when naming your podcast. Because honestly, avoiding these mistakes can save you a ton of headache down the road. Number 1, please skip the overly long titles. If your show name looks like a full sentence, it's going to get chopped off in the podcast apps. Short and punchy always works better. Number 2, avoid hard to spell words. If someone has to guess at the spelling, they're probably never going to find you. Remember, your podcast name has to be easy to search and easy to say. Number 3, don't use inside jokes. I promise you, what makes sense to your close friends doesn't always land with your audience. Listeners shouldn't need a secret decoder ring to find out what your show is about. And finally, please don't duplicate names. Yes, people still do this. Always double check Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the other apps to make sure that your brilliant idea isn't already taken. Think of it like this. Naming your podcast is like giving someone directions. If the signposts are too long, confusing, or pointing to the wrong address, people are just going to get lost. And this ties back into the framework, right? In the strategy phase, avoiding these pitfalls keeps your foundation solid and your brand aligned. In the attraction phase, it makes your listeners can actually find you and stay with you. So, yeah, the what not to do list is just as important as the tips for what to do. Get this right, and your podcast name becomes a clear, easy path straight to your show. So let's say you landed on a name you love. Before you run off and order the merch, let's run it through a quick checklist to make sure that it's actually ready for the world, okay? First, we want to check the .com domain. Even if you're not building a website right away, snagging the domain keeps your options open and protects your brand. Number 2, I want you to grab the Instagram and other social handles, right? You don't want your show name to be one thing in Apple Podcasts and something completely different on social, because consistency will build that trust. Third, make sure the name isn't already taken in the podcast platforms. I cannot tell you how many times people skip this step and then wonder why their show is buried under 3 other podcasts with the same exact name. Or worse, you're going to get a letter in the mail because they've already trademarked their name. And finally, the out loud test. Say your podcast name 3 times fast. If you stumble over it or it feels awkward, chances are other people will too. Remember, word of mouth is one of your best growth tools, and people can't share what they can't pronounce. If your name checks all these boxes, then you're good to go. So yes, creativity is great, but not at the expense of clarity. Your podcast name is your first impression. Make it obvious, make it relevant, and make it search friendly. And here's where the Seamless Podcast Framework comes back in. This little checklist is both strategy, which is protecting your brand, right, and attraction, making your podcast easier to find and share. When you nail these 2, momentum becomes so much easier to build. And here's the thing. If you're not sure whether your podcast name is helping or hurting your growth, I've got you, friend. Join my free newsletter. And like I said before, when that welcome email hits your inbox, just reply with the words podcast title on it, share a link to your podcast, and I will personally share my thoughts and give you one suggestion to make your title work harder for your show. You'll find that link down in the show notes. And remember, clever names are fun, but clear names get found, shared, and remembered. All right, friends, until next time, keep showing up with purpose, keep your podcast name clear, and keep it seamless. Bye for now.